In a case that carved a new chapter in American legal history, Cordelia Botkin orchestrated a crime that spanned two separate jurisdictions. From her base in California, she dispatched a deadly package that would reach its destination in Delaware. This audacious act set the stage for a tale of passion, betrayal, and the pursuit of justice. But before we delve into the intricate details of this transcontinental crime, let's step back and get acquainted with the key players in this gripping saga. Born in 1854 in Polk County, Missouri, Cordelia Botkin later moved to California with her family, marrying Welcome Botkin, and becoming the mother of a son. It all started in September 1895, when a bicycle belonging to a journalist named John Preston Dunning broke down in Golden Gate Park. As he attended to his wheel, he spotted two women on a nearby bench, one of whom was Cordelia. Despite the societal norms of the 19th century, discouraging interactions between unfamiliar men and women, they engaged in a natural conversation. This connection deepened, leading to an intimate relationship. As details of their affair surfaced later, the public reacted with shock and disapproval. Cordelia, at 41 years old, lived in San Francisco with her son Beverly, a rather indulgent young man in his early 20s. She maintained a comfortable independent life with her husband, who officially resided in Stockton, but frequently sought solace with a San Francisco landlady. John Dunning, around 32 years old, also had a family, a wife named Mary Elizabeth and a daughter Mary, named after her mother. Sadly, their household was not a harmonious one, as he confessed that his wife, hailing from a farming family, was deeply devout and struggled to adapt to life in San Francisco, and by 1896, perhaps distressed by her husband's infidelity, Mary departed and returned with their daughter to Dover, Delaware, to stay with her father, a former congressman, John B. Pennington. Around this time, Dunning also started placing substantial bets at the racetrack, and his misappropriation of $4,000 in office funds to cover his racetrack gambling debts led to his dismissal from his position as day manager of the Associated Press San Francisco bureau. Now penniless, Dunning joined his newfound love Cordelia, and they first lived together at 927 Geary in a two-story house that later changed its number out of embarrassment, before moving to the Victoria Hotel, situated on the corner of Hyde and California. The joyful times, or, depending on your perspective, the escapades that unfolded in room 26 of the Victoria. Witnesses remembered seeing Dunning in casual repose, a glass of whiskey in hand, as he engaged in banter with a bathrobe-clad Cordelia. The affair endured for nearly 3 years, when out of the blue, Dunning was rehired in March 1898, as the lead reporter for the Associated Press, covering what would later be known as the Spanish-American War. Cordelia accompanied him, bidding a tearful farewell as they boarded the ferry to the Oakland Railroad station. Dunning even reconciled with his wife before departing for Cuba, where he played a crucial role in the rescue of survivors from the Spanish battleships that were sunk during the Battle of Santiago de Cuba. Cordelia was convinced he was destined for a grim fate at the hands of the Spanish. However, according to his letters, Dunning found himself rather enjoying the experience, even keeping a piece of an enemy's scalp as a memento. It soured over time, emitting a far cry from a pleasant fragrance. Meanwhile, trouble brewed back in Dover, as Elizabeth received a series of unsigned letters, detailing her husband's involvement with an intriguing and attractive woman in San Francisco. These were followed by a box of chocolates, accompanied by a modest cambric handkerchief, and a note signed, "With love to yourself and baby," as Elizabeth was known for her sweet tooth. On the evening of August 9, 1898, after a meal of trout and corn fritters, Elizabeth and her family gathered on the porch to relish the summer night. She shared the candy, pondering its sender, but the next day, those who indulged in the filled chocolates fell terribly ill. However, those who refrained, like the patriarch John Pennington, who favored his tobacco over sweets, and those who stuck to hard chocolates, remained in good health. While most of the afflicted eventually recovered, Elizabeth and her elder sister, 44-year-old Ida Harriet Dean, succumbed to a painful death a few days later. Until the end was near, their doctor believed they were suffering from cholera morbus, a catch-all term for stomach disorders, prevalent in the summers prior to refrigeration. It was only at the 11th hour, too late to rescue them, that he realized they were victims of arsenic poisoning. Dunning's mourning family sent for him, and in his anguished arrival, 10 days later he took one glance at the anonymous letters and uttered, "Cordelia." The local San Francisco newspapers swiftly caught wind of the case, blurring the lines between the Examiner and the police department in directing the investigation. The box of bonbons was traced back to Haas and Sons Confectionery, nestled in the distinctive flatiron-shaped Phelan building at 810 Market Street. A swarm of reporters descended upon the shop, driving the staff into hiding. The handkerchief was found to bear a price stamp from the city of Paris, a once elegant department store on Union Square, that later embraced a more Texan flair as Neiman Marcus. A clerk at the Owl Drug Store on 1002 Market Street recalled selling arsenic to a woman who resembled Cordelia. Even more compelling, Mrs. Botkin, as the headlines dubbed her, was discovered at her sister's residence in Healdsburg. Enterprising reporter Lizzie Livernash rushed to her side, presenting herself as a kindred spirit, and coaxing the semi-hysterical fugitive to share her story, or at least a significant portion of it, all of which duly found its way onto the pages of the Examiner. The relentless coverage by the press meant that when the trial finally commenced on December 6, the public was well informed. Like an audience prepared in advance of a president's official statement, the people of San Francisco turned their attention towards the courthouse, eager to catch a glimpse of the new celebrities concocted by the media they had been avidly reading about. Their foreknowledge only heightened their anticipation. Every day, the courtroom was packed, with men in bulky topcoats and women adjusting ornate hats as they competed for front-row seats. On one particularly rainy day, California was experiencing an unusual bout of cold and dry weather that year. The packed room generated clouds of steam from water-soaked clothing. As the trial neared its conclusion, with the attorneys set to deliver their closing statements, a line of over 500 people extended from the courthouse, including those who couldn't quite squeeze inside. To accommodate them and engage the rest of the city in the macabre spectacle, the Examiner set up a public bulletin board, posting real-time updates on the trial's progress. A contingent of lawyers, doctors, and grieving family members arrived by train from Delaware just as the trial commenced, looking somewhat bewildered by what they evidently saw as the Wild West. The prosecution meticulously presented its evidence, offering extensive chemical and handwriting analysis. Fingerprint examination, a potential cornerstone in the circumstantial case, was still in its early stages, and thus inadmissible in court. Throughout the testimony, all eyes remained fixed on the defendant. She sat resolutely, always dressed in black, with a white lace handkerchief clasped in her hand. Cordelia then took the stand, initially speaking with vigor, giving her listeners a glimpse of her potential intelligence and independence. However, acting on counsel's advice, she adopted a more submissive tone. She meticulously countered the prosecution's assertions, presenting a series of alibis to prove that she couldn't have bought or mailed the chocolates. Furthermore, she pointed out that the arsenic purchased in June, long before the crime occurred, was in powdered form, not crystalline like the pieces found in the candy, but it made no difference. In December 1898, she was initially found guilty of first-degree murder, lodged an appeal, and then faced a retrial in 1904, where she was once again convicted, ultimately receiving a life imprisonment sentence. When the news flashed on the Examiner's bulletin board, the crowd erupted in cheers. Initially confined in San Francisco, Cordelia was relocated to San Quentin State Prison following the devastating 1906 San Francisco earthquake. Despite numerous appeals, she spent the rest of her days in San Quentin State Prison, eventually succumbing to softening of the brain due to melancholy on March 7, 1910, while John Dunning, whose career had been shattered by the trial's revelations, had already passed away 2 years earlier in Philadelphia. As the curtain falls on this gripping tale of deceit, passion, and justice, we are left with the enduring legacy of a crime that transcended state lines and captured the imagination of a nation. From the complex web of relationships and forbidden desires to the tragic consequences that followed, this story is a reminder that reality can often outdo even the most compelling fiction.